After the apocalypse began, I hid alone in the supermarket's hidden safe room. I never imagined that when the world ended, this supermarket would become my fortress. 1 week before the outbreak, my loaded boyfriend kicked me out of his villa because he had slept with my fake sweet best friend. He tossed me a check for $2 million. With that $2 million, I bought a large secondhand supermarket. I stocked it with snacks I loved, ready to start my happily checked out life. From then on, chips would basically be free. The supermarket's previous owner had even built a hidden basement safe room. If he hadn't told me, I never would have known it existed. I took out another loan and bought a soft, comfortable bed, a refrigerator, a set of cabinets, and a washing machine. Last came a dining table and chairs. I planned to live in my supermarket from then on, and save myself the rent. The only drawback was that it had no windows, only one small skylight. Luckily, the ventilation system was decent. Still, it could get stuffy, so I installed a solar generator. That night, I cooked myself a simple bowl of instant ramen. Since the store had not opened yet, I had locked the supermarket doors early. I was binge-watching a show when a news alert suddenly popped up on my phone. It said a riot had broken out at a shopping mall in Bayridge. A man had suddenly gone berserk and tackled a woman to the ground. She struggled a few times, then went still. The man was quickly subdued by bystanders. Then, on screen, the woman suddenly sat up. A violent unease swallowed me whole. The next day, I called in workers to install a reinforced bulletproof security door. Even that small skylight was replaced with thick bulletproof glass. Then I spent a fortune on 100 bulk water barrels. After that, I rushed to the garden center and bought some vegetable seedlings. I took out another loan and bought 2 large fish tanks. In one, I raised dozens of fast-breeding fish. In the other, I kept over 100 crabs. After all that was done, I locked the supermarket doors for good. To be safe, I also posted a sign outside that said, "Closed for lease." After that, terrified and on edge, I hid alone in the supermarket for 2 days. Just as I started wondering if I was overreacting, the television news came on. A female reporter was knocked down by someone covered in blood. The next second, the streets were full of people fleeing in panic. Just as I feared, the zombie virus had truly broken out. I went down into the basement. I had deliberately left half the space open for growing vegetables. Above it, I had installed a grow light. I lay on the bed. By then, the whole block had sunk into chaos. Outside my supermarket, there wasn't a living soul left. Then my residence group chat suddenly lit up. "Is anyone still alive?" One by one, a few people in the chat answered, but I said nothing. Soon, they started eyeing my supermarket. There had to be plenty of supplies inside. Even though I figured they couldn't pry through my layers of security doors, I still stayed cautious. I watched the security cameras all night long. That was when I noticed something strange about the zombies. Their activity dropped sharply at night. So if anyone really wanted to sneak into my supermarket, they would probably move after dark. Looked at that way, daytime was actually safer for me. So, during that period, I completely changed my sleep schedule. At night, I watched the cameras. During the day, I caught up on sleep. And if anyone tried to break through my first security door, I would have to prepare for the worst. I kept watch over the cameras for 3 straight days. Finally, someone made a move. I watched 2 men head toward my place, one of them keeping watch nearby. The man in front opened a toolbox and pulled out a pile of tools. Luckily, I had spent serious money on that door. It wasn't something they could just pop open. I watched the man murmur a few words to his partner. Then his eyes found the camera in the shadows, as if he were staring right at me. He looked annoyed, but still left without a fight. After they were gone, I came out of the safe room. Now I had to seal my security door shut. I dragged out a bag of cement. I packed it into the cracks around the door. 3 full bags of cement went into sealing the entrance completely. I knew that once I did this, I wouldn't be getting out anytime soon, but it would also keep the people outside from getting in. And when those 2 men came back, it would fully expose the fact that I was still alive. The next day, the internet was flooded with talk of zombies. Some people were even courting death with mukbang live streams. I watched a young woman on camera tearing into lobster. After thinking it over, I anonymously registered an alt account and sent her a warning. It showed as read, but she never replied. Clearly, she had great faith in her own security door, but she had underestimated human nature. At this point, life and death were up to fate. If she wanted to get herself killed, I couldn't stop her. Sure enough, by the 3rd day, that young woman stopped streaming. Hopefully, her phone had just died. A week passed after those two men left. Then they came back. What I hadn't expected was the lead man using a crowbar to wrench open the roll-up shutter. He planted a bomb at the weakest part of my wall. Clearly, this was what they had been rigging up for days. It looked like they meant to blow through the wall, then draw on zombies to bite me to death. That way, by nightfall, everything in the supermarket would be theirs for the taking. Just then, someone tagged me in the group chat. They threatened me, saying the bomb would not go off until the next day. They gave me one night to think it over. If I agreed to open the door, they would remove the bomb. But I knew, the moment I opened that door, they still would not let me live. So I decided to risk everything. I took all the shelf-stable food and moved it down into the basement. I hauled as much as I possibly could. By the end, the basement was packed to the brim. In the most hidden spot behind the checkout counter, I hid an alarm siren. That was my worst-case plan. If anyone discovered my hidden safe room, I would trigger the alarm siren and draw on the zombies. Then I would let the zombies kill them for me. I locked the entrance to the safe room tight. Then I squeezed onto the tiny bed that could barely fit one person. From there, I stared hard at the security feed. Then came a deafening boom. The bomb outside exploded. At first, it did almost nothing. But soon, I could not laugh anymore. They had hidden several speakers behind the bomb. At last, I understood their real plan. He knew the bomb could not truly blast through my wall. He meant to lure the zombies over and have them smash this place apart. As the music blared, the zombies rushed toward the sound. My wall finally buckled under the strain. Half an hour later, the zombie horde withdrew. As expected, those two men came back. But there are always people too greedy for their own good. Faced with so many supplies, the two of them started beating each other bloody. During the fight, one man got his upper arm slashed open. The smell of blood spread fast. The next second, a faint rustling came from nearby. The zombies had been drawn inside. Very quickly, he was bitten to death by the zombies. Among the severed arms and torn limbs, someone slowly struggled back to their feet. Their eyes were blood red. Ugly red veins spread across their faces, dense and tangled, like spider webs. Only after everything went quiet did the girl dare to let out a soft, broken sob. She was hiding up on the shelves, and for a long time, she would not come down. To be fair, her boyfriend had treated her pretty well. At least better than Julian, that cheating bastard. Not until night fell the next day did the girl finally dare to climb down carefully. The scattered bloodstains on the floor looked even more chilling in the dark. But the girl did not cry again. She was terrifyingly calm. Honestly, I kind of admired that about her. I watched her go to the shelves and take some food. She did not leave. Instead, she tore the packages open and started eating right there. Once she had eaten and drunk her fill, she crawled out and gathered all the fallen bricks from the ground. I watched her with growing interest. Then I saw her take every bottle of glue from the shelves. She started gluing the bricks together, using them to patch the hole in the wall. After barely patching the wall, the girl pushed over the large fish tank I had left on the floor. Then she poured all the water into it. To be honest, that method could only barely hold back the zombies. It would not stop those people. They would definitely come back. Because sooner or later, everyone runs out of food. I did not know why the girl would not leave. But as long as she stayed, I could only hide in the safe room. The next day, just after dawn, a little light barely filtered through the supermarket skylight. In that dim sunlight, the girl's eyes were unnaturally clear and calm. A shiver ran through me for no reason. I did not know why, but she always gave me a dangerous feeling, and that feeling proved right very soon. For a month, zombies surrounded the city, hunkered down in the hidden basement safe room beneath the secondhand supermarket. I was doing surprisingly well. That day, I had one leg crossed over the other, eating chips that were about to expire, watching on camera as that girl hurried around reinforcing the broken wall. Suddenly, she stopped what she was doing. Her bright eyes stared straight through the screen right at me. I froze for a second. Had she found me? Sure enough, I saw her frown in confusion. Then she slowly came over with a broom in her hand and smashed the camera to pieces. The screen in front of me went black instantly. I completely lost my view of the supermarket interior. Listening to the girl's shoes step across the floor, making sharp little taps, panic rose in my chest for no reason. I even regretted not going up while she slept and slitting her throat. But it was too late for regrets now. That girl was a ticking time bomb. Fortunately, my exterior cameras were still working. I could still monitor the situation outside at any time. Soon, night fell. The zombie horde withdrew again. Several days passed like that. As more people realized the dead mostly moved during the day. More and more survivors came nearby to search for food. Some people still accidentally drew zombies in, but most made it out safely. I knew this situation would probably end soon, because the government had already established a safe zone in the northwestern Badlands. Few people ever went there. There were fewer zombies too. As soon as the zombie outbreak erupted, the military quickly secured the area. I saw plenty of people sneaking into garages at night, loading up their families, and driving out of the neighborhood. But that girl did not leave. She still lived in my supermarket. Sometimes she even tapped on the floor, as if searching for something. I suspected she had already discovered the safe room existed. Maybe even that I existed. 3 days later, the girl finally found the entrance to my safe room. She tried to pry up the wooden panel, but failed. Every day after that, I could hear the shrill scrape of a knife dragging against metal at the entrance. And beside my bed, I kept a knife. The moment she dared come in, I would kill her on the spot. On the 3rd day of her stubbornly prying at the floor, the roar of a vehicle suddenly came from outside. Through the cameras, I watched in terror. As for burly men climbed out of a van. 2 of them even had tattoos on their arms. What chilled me to the bone was that they were carrying guns. They quickly found the hole in the supermarket wall. With ridiculous ease, they tore down the bricks the girl had worked so hard to piece together. As for the fish tank, against that kind of brute force, it meant nothing at all. Once they got inside, I had no idea what was happening in there. I could only faintly hear voices talking, but the soundproofing down here was too good, so I could not make out what they were saying. Just as I sat there, lost and helpless, someone began hammering wildly at the safe room entrance. They seemed to be muffling part of the noise with a towel, so all I heard above me were broken, heavy thuds, like a muted hammer. Each strike landed against my heart. Obviously, that girl had sold me out. Without hesitation, I triggered the alarm siren I had locked inside the checkout counter safe. It was deafening. Even from the basement, I could hear it. Then, through the exterior cameras, I saw zombies start rushing toward the sound. The pounding above the safe room stopped, too. Only panicked footsteps remained. What I did not expect was that they were smarter than I thought. I saw 2 men run back to the van. One of them was carrying the lockbox with the alarm siren inside. Then the van ran straight over the zombies rushing in. Blood and flesh sprayed everywhere. Those who had actually chosen to draw the zombies away by driving off. In that moment, I knew I was done for. My brain started spinning at full speed. About half an hour later, I heard the dull pounding of a blunt tool above me again. Soon, the sound of the van returned. It looked like those 2 men had successfully shaken off the zombies and dumped the lockbox carrying the alarm siren. The wooden cabinet began to tremble slightly. The fear in that moment was stronger than when the outbreak began. I forced myself to calm down. Then I shoved every heavy thing I could into the cabinet, trying to make it heavier. But those people seemed determined to drag me out. I heard one of the men let out a soft sound of surprise. Then the chainsaw started up. Luckily, someone beside him stopped him in time, because it might attract zombies. Before long, the group got back into the van. But for some reason, the van did not move for a long time. Soon, I had my answer, because the next second, the chainsaw roared again. At the same time, that girl got into their van. The van sat quietly off to the side. To my horror, I realized the zombies were coming again. In that moment, the horde looked like monkeys being baited and jerked around. But very soon, I could not laugh, because the chainsaw had followed the gap they had pried open and cut through the cabinet's wooden board. Would chips hiss down around me? My heart went cold, bit by bit. I knew I could not escape. When they dragged me out, all I saw were zombie bodies strewn across the floor. The men were all smeared with blood. They looked a little worse for wear. The burly man in charge lifted my chin. He looked me over from side to side, then stood up. Coldly, he told his men, "Let's go." I knew he did not plan to kill me, but if they left me here, I would not survive either. So I forced myself to stand and looked that man straight in the eye. "You have to take me with you." He seemed a little intrigued. His gaze settled on me with faint amusement. The safe zone you're heading for is 2,463 kilometers from here. Even if you pack this vehicle full of supplies, they won't last you a week, and you'll need to refuel on the way. I know the roads around here. I can get you out of the city as fast as possible. Besides, once you reach the safe zone, how are the four of you supposed to manage by yourselves? And I suddenly raised my hand and pointed at the girl beside us. In a clear, cool voice, I said, "I'm prettier than she is." The moment those words came out, all of them looked at me with very strange eyes. But I straightened my back and let them stare. I was not wrong. Back then, Julian Cross had chased after me like a lovesick fool. Precisely because I was pretty. The man in charge stayed silent for a while. Then he waved to the others and said, "Bring her." One of the men opened his mouth, clearly reluctant, but in the end, he said nothing. I saw the girl beside me go a little blank. Then she almost ran over and clung to one man's leg. She lifted a face full of pitiful puppy dog eyes, tears trembling on her cheeks, ready to fall. What about me? The one they called Victor was a thin man with glasses. He looked at the leader with visible hesitation, then spoke up. "Caleb, why don't we take Amelia too? She's skinny, and she does not eat much. Besides, she was the one who came up with that plan." The man they called Caleb nodded. He lifted his chin slightly. "Bring her." While they were talking, I had already helped load several boxes of food into the van. I could even faintly feel Caleb's sharp gaze fixed on me. I did not know which of my words had swayed him and made him keep me. After we packed the van full of food and daily supplies, we climbed into it. Since so much space inside was crammed with supplies, there was no real seat left for me or that girl. Amelia sat on the lap of Victor, the thin man with glasses. I was pulled into the arms of another muscular man. Caleb was driving. The remaining man sat in the passenger seat, holding a map and giving directions. The van had not been moving long before I heard the girl's soft panting beside me. I turned my head to look. Victor had already slipped his hand into Amelia's clothes. Nervously, I glanced at the man holding me. A rare flush had risen on his dark face. But he did nothing. That gave me a little comfort. Still, the whole way I stayed wound tight with tension. At last, we reached a highway rest stop and took a brief break there. It was a rest stop along the highway, so there were very few people around. They made a sweep with their guns and found no zombies, while I was busy waiting on these gentlemen hand and foot. Victor could not wait to carry Amelia into the rest stop lounge. Before long, Amelia's broken little moans drifted out. I pretended I had seen nothing. As usual, I eagerly made a fire and cooked for them. The burly man who had held me seemed unable to keep watching. I knew that in this group, things were fine in ordinary moments, but when danger came, she would be the first one abandoned. Of course, I would be the second. After preparing food for them, I picked up a dagger and silently made a patrol around the area. I restocked the van with supplies we were missing, then filled the tank. I also took the empty gas cans from the van and filled them to the brim with gasoline. 2 big cans full. After all that was done, I found a faucet that still worked and filled a small bucket with clean water. One by one, I carried it over and washed the 3 bosses' exposed arms and necks. I could feel it. Even the man who had not wanted to bring me now looked at me differently. I did not dare wash my own face. I only washed my hands and neck. Then I took off my shoes and socks and washed my feet. Just then, I felt a scorching stare. I looked back, and there was Victor. He looked smug and satisfied. His eyes were fixed, naked and hungry, on my bare feet. After being washed, my feet looked pale and small. I quickly shoved my feet back into my shoes. I did not even have time to put my socks on. I just fled in a panic. Victor did not chase me, but the way he looked at me was disgustingly blatant. By the time I got back to the van, the others had finished resting and were ready to move. During that break, I had figured out who they were. They were neighbors from the same apartment complex. The burly man who had held me was Simon Chase. He was a police officer. He was also the one who got the gun. The leader, Caleb, was Caleb Storm. Victor was Victor Hale. The quiet one was Luke Rivers. As for the girl, her name was Amelia Monroe. She had been Victor Hale's junior back in college. Later, I heard from Simon That Victor had chased Amelia years ago. But Amelia had never wanted him. Well, who would have thought? I secretly glanced at Amelia. I could not help feeling a flicker of admiration. She was the kind of girl who knew how to bend without breaking. Just then, my eyes accidentally met Victor's. A wave of nausea hit me. In this group, Caleb Storm was the most unpredictable. Simon Chase was the most innocent. Luke Rivers seemed cold on the outside, warm underneath. Only Victor Hale was a complete moron. His head was full of filth. That night, we found a fairly quiet highway rest stop to sleep in, to keep anyone from running off with the supplies, and to guard against danger. All of us squeezed into one room to rest. But, in the middle of the night, someone crept up beside me. I woke up because he was touching me. When I opened my eyes, Victor's glasses were glinting coldly. One hand was clamped hard over my mouth. The other was fumbling with my clothes. That sick bastard. The moment I snapped awake, I kicked out hard. Back in college, out of pure interest, I had joined the Taekwondo club. My aim was sharp, and the force was brutal. Sure enough, the next second, Victor screamed like he was being slaughtered, the sound tearing through the night. Everyone else jolted awake. I seized the chance and scrambled up fast. Then I hid behind Simon Chase. I pinched my own thigh hard, using the pain to squeeze out a few tears. I clung to Simon's waist and kept crying. It left him completely at a loss. As a police officer, his sense of justice made him despise what Victor had done. I saw Caleb Storm's cold gaze sweep over us. Instinctively, I ducked my head again. Before all this, these men might have been decent enough young guys. But the apocalypse only magnified the worst in people. After all, in the apocalypse, rape, kidnapping, and looting were hardly shocking anymore. Someone could slit a throat in public, and no one would say a word. So after he was exposed, Victor Hale stayed eerily calm. He even acted completely justified. Caleb Storm did not say much. He only punched him once, and warned him to keep his urges under control, so he would not bring trouble down on them. I saw Victor's face turn vicious in an instant. Unease suddenly settled over my heart, and my fear came true soon enough. Victor ran. He took Amelia Monroe and a van full of supplies with him, then drove off without a care. I had known Victor was unreliable, but not this unreliable. While Caleb and the others got out to search for supplies, he claimed he needed to take a piss. Then he grabbed Amelia and bolted. I was the first to notice, but I only had time to yank one box of supplies off the van. By the time Caleb and the others arrived, Victor had already locked himself inside. When Simon Chase tried to chase him, he clung hard to the van with both hands. In the end, he was dragged for dozens of yards. His arms were scraped bloody by the rough gravel. He looked utterly miserable. I opened the box I had managed to grab from the van. Half of it was toilet paper. The other half was sanitary pads. With Caleb Storm staring at me like I was an idiot, my face went blazing red. Simon cursed Victor. He was full of regret now, because Victor had been closest to him before this. And Simon was the reason Caleb had agreed to bring him along. We were still 1,983 kilometers from the safe zone. Without a vehicle, walking there was obviously impossible. Luckily, we had stopped at a highway rest stop that was not completely abandoned. There were quite a few private cars inside. But of course, a few zombies were wandering around too. That was why Caleb and the others had not dared shoot to stop Victor. If they failed to stop him and drew the zombies over instead, we really would all be wiped out. Fortunately, there were not many zombies here. At a rough count, there were only about a dozen. But the real problem was, we did not know if more zombies were nearby, or whether they would come running at the sound. And between all their guns, they only had 10 bullets left. If a shot was not a clean headshot, it was just a wasted bullet. Then Luke Rivers, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly stepped forward. He decided he would draw the zombies away by himself. The rest of us would search for a car, and then circle back to pick him up. It was a dangerous choice. If we were too late getting to him, or if someone turned traitor like Victor. Luke was putting his life entirely in our hands. My mind spun for a moment. In the end, I said nothing. Simon looked like he wanted to speak, but Caleb Storm held him back. Luke ran a long way out. Only when his figure had shrunk into a tiny dot did he resolutely raise the gun to the sky and fire. At the sound, the zombies suddenly lifted their heads. Then, with blood-red eyes, they chased after Luke. Once they had all gone after him, the three of us moved fast. Technically, I was only there to make up the numbers. I was not close to any of them. I still did not know why they were willing to keep me around. Honestly, I should have been the one sent to draw out the zombies. But of course, it had to be me. Who found a working car first? I glanced toward Caleb's storm, still a few minutes away from me. My gaze hardened. Then I yanked the door open and slid into the driver's seat. As the engine came to life, I quickly mapped the direction in my head. Then I slammed my foot on the gas. The car roared. Like an arrow loosed from the string, it shot out of the rest stop. A cloud of dust billowed behind me. In the rearview mirror, I could just make out Caleb Storm's eyes turning colder. When the car rolled over the first zombie's body, the tires made a grinding squeal. The sound made my scalp crawl. I floored the gas, but my heart was pounding like crazy. A zombie slammed into the car. Its eyes bulged out of its skull, and it clung hard to the window. I nearly jumped out of my skin, but my foot did not ease off the gas. The zombie was thrown off soon enough, and I finally reached Luke Rivers. He looked absolutely awful. A huge chunk of fabric had been torn from his back, but luckily, there were no real wounds. In the moment I stopped, 2 more zombies rushed us. Luke gave them both clean headshots. Then he yanked the door open and jumped in. The second he sat down, I hit the gas again. Luke had not even gotten his balance, and almost got thrown right back out. He gave me a mildly wounded look, but did not say a word. There was no time for catching up. The remaining 5 zombies were already chasing us. I could not turn back to pick up Caleb and the others yet. Right now, I had to take Luke and draw those 5 things away. Later, Luke described me in that moment as looking like I was high out of my mind. When I drifted the car to a stop in front of Caleb's group, Simon's jaw practically hit the floor. Then I raised an eyebrow at them, smug as hell. Get in. 1 second later, Caleb Storm opened the door and tossed me out of the driver's seat like a baby chick. Ungrateful bastard. Still, I did not save Luke because my conscience suddenly came roaring back. I simply knew I could never reach the safe zone on my own. And Caleb's group looked like my best ticket out. At least Simon and Luke were good kids at heart. After Simon filled the car's tank, he filled to extra gas cans too. This place had probably been picked over before, so there were not many supplies left. After searching the whole building, they only found a few stale steamed buns and 2 packets of pickled mustard greens. We could not stay here long. So, once we finished scavenging, we hit the road at once. I never expected the world to be that ridiculously coincidental. Of course, the universe had to throw us together again. At the next highway rest stop, we ran into Victor Hale and Amelia Monroe again, but something seemed off with them this time. 3 vicious-looking men had them surrounded. Looked like they were getting robbed. Caleb's group had nothing to lose. We had no supplies at all, so we were not afraid of being robbed. The 3 big men did glare at Caleb's group pretty fiercely. But in terms of numbers, we were evenly matched. So, we managed to keep the peace. We even made some half-hearted small talk. As for Victor, aside from Simon looking angry at first, Caleb and the others treated Victor and Amelia like they were invisible. Amelia shot Caleb's group several flirtatious looks and got ignored every time. When I saw it, though, I threw a few flirty looks right back at Amelia. It pissed her off beautifully. The 3 big men came over and started talking to us. When they saw us gnawing on stale steamed buns, they even gave each of us an expired sausage stick and half a bottle of mineral water. They wanted to team up with us and head to the safe zone together. At that, Caleb Storm lifted his eyes and glanced at Victor with faint amusement. Then he said he had no interest in traveling with scum. Anyone could see what the big man really meant. He wanted to use his supplies to make Caleb's group risk their lives. If danger came later, Caleb's people would be the ones sent in first. Besides, in the apocalypse, who would ever trust total strangers to watch their back? Caleb said it purely to get under Victor's skin. The conversation went nowhere. After that, there was not much else to say. But there was one person in their group who gave me a faint sense of familiarity. I just could not place where I had seen him before. We only rested briefly at that rest stop before hitting the road again. But one of the men who had robbed Victor kept giving me a dangerous feeling. Fortunately, we did not have much to do with them. By then, our group was slowly drawing closer to the northwestern Badlands. Along the way, I got my period once. It nearly drew zombies to us. Luckily, we got through it without disaster. Later, After we discovered that zombie blood masked human scent, we started hunting lone zombies. Then we smeared their blood over the car. And sure enough, it worked. The only problem was, once water started running low, every one of us reeked. We smelled like beggars sleeping in the street. Caleb and the others had full beards on top of it. Come to think of it, when I first met them, they already looked rough and unshaven. So I still had no idea what glorious faces were hiding under all that beard. By now, we were less than 300 kilometers from the safe zone, and our supplies had finally officially run out. That morning, Luke had an upset stomach and used up our last half roll of toilet paper. So for the entire morning, he looked like anyone who came near him might die. We still had a full day and night of driving before reaching the safe zone. And the closer we got, the more zombies there were. All the zombies nearby were drawn by the heavy human activity there. So if we wanted in, we would have to break through a zombie horde. Sending a group of people who had not eaten in 2 days against zombies was basically serving ourselves up on a platter for the zombies. So our top priority was finding supplies fast. According to the map, the closest place to us was Fairhaven. It was also the only major city near the safe zone. If we were lucky, we might even run into safe zone personnel searching the area. Then we could follow them in without trouble. Of course, we might also run into other teams heading for the safe zone. If both sides kept to themselves, fine. The real fear was a fight breaking out. We waited until dark before daring to enter the city. But the moment we got inside, we hit an obstacle. A zombie was twisting its stiff body and shuffling toward us. Fortunately, by now we had built up solid teamwork. Working together, taking down 7 or 8 zombies was no problem. Even I could neatly drive a knife straight into a zombie's skull. After dealing with those few zombies, we very skillfully smeared zombie blood over ourselves. Luke even ripped off a zombie's arm for self-defense. We got into the city almost too smoothly. The city was littered with zombie corpses. Broken walls and ruins lined the streets. Thick smoke rose from every direction. A few zombies wandered along the roadside. They seemed confused by our sudden intrusion. But at this point, they were just mindless puppets. They could not tell whether we were their own kind. Of course, some zombies were especially stupid and reckless. Whenever one got too close, Simon and the others would snap its neck without changing expression. What a bunch of savage humans. We cleared out several convenience stores in a row. All we found were nearly expired cans of fermented tofu tucked in a corner. Simon stared at the fermented tofu, and his face darkened several shades. I was not picky about food, but too much of that stuff was painfully salty. We packed the fermented tofu and kept searching. At last, in someone's fridge, we found half a bag of bread and 2 bags of frozen dumplings. Caleb and the others sealed the doors and windows. After they pulled the curtains shut, I tested the home's propane tank. It still worked. Unfortunately, the taps had already run dry, so we had to pan-fry the dumplings instead. For people were splitting 48 dumplings. I only dared to scoop 8 for myself. Simon glanced at me. Then he picked it from his bowl and gave them to me. When he met my puzzled look, he just scratched his head, embarrassed, and said he could not eat that many. The very next second, Caleb snatched those 2 dumplings right out of my bowl. Perfect. I was short anyway. In that moment, I genuinely wanted to stab Caleb's storm. After a brief rest, while it was still before dawn, we searched a few more homes. Luckily, we found 3 packs of spicy snack sticks and a case of expired crispy ramen snacks. God knows, the sight of those spicy snack sticks nearly made me cry with joy. There was also half a bag of flour and 2 cans of Coke, but we could not eat the flour straight. So we had no choice but to sacrifice the 2 cans of Coke and pour them into the flour. Right there, we cooked up 8 flatbreads. Caleb and the others also scraped together a jerrycan's worth of gas from roadside cars. Just as we had searched enough and were ready to pull out, a piercing scream suddenly tore through the night. Caleb froze when he heard it. Then, unbelievably, he prepared to check it out. I knew he was not the type to meddle for no reason. And in the apocalypse, the fewer complications, the better. But my voice had never carried much weight in the group. Luke and the others did not object either. Moving along with us was a huge mass of zombies. The sheer number of them made my scalp crawl. Soon, we saw a group of people surrounded by the zombie horde. When I saw the man and woman being protected in the middle, even with all my self-control, I could not help blurting, "Holy shit." Question. Should I laugh first or applaud? Asking for a friend. Urgent. I never expected to see Julian Cross and Clara Whitlock again under these circumstances. If I had known, I would have saved every bite I could. Simon asked me with obvious interest. You know them? Know them? Oh. It went way beyond that. I nodded eagerly. I was just about to tell him the sordid little saga between me and those two, when Caleb cut our conversation short. Get ready. What? Ready for what? I looked at Caleb's side profile, half hidden beneath his beard. A ridiculous soap opera thought suddenly popped into my head. Then I met Caleb's unusually determined gaze. Rescue? Caleb Storm, are you out of your damn mind? I stared at him coldly. I never thought that in our group. Caleb Storm would turn out to be such a bleeding heart hero. If you want to go die, fine. I will not stop you. But we are not going with you to die for people we know nothing about. Unless you can give me a reason we absolutely have to go. Yeah, Caleb, even if you want us to follow you into death, at least let us know what we are dying for, Luke said in a low voice. Simon also stared fixedly at him, quietly blocking his way. As we spoke, the zombies had already surrounded Julian and the others. Caleb lowered his eyes to me. His voice was calm. Do you see it? I frowned. Then I looked carefully toward Julian again. He and Clara were positioned right in the center, protected by a whole group of people. Logically, in the apocalypse, those people had no reason to protect them, unless those had something that absolutely had to be protected. And it was very likely a matter of life and death. Could it be? I looked at Caleb, shocked and uncertain, but he shook his head and said he was not sure either. If we wanted the answer, we would have to rescue those two first. I nodded. I agreed. It was risky, but manageable. Luke seemed to realize something too, and stopped arguing. Only Simon scratched his head, looking like he wanted to ask something. But in the end, he said nothing. He had an almost unconditional trust in us. The people protecting Julian had already started fighting the zombies. I saw Clara collapse weakly against Julian, all fragile and helpless. What rotten luck. We actually had to save these two pieces of trash. Even though I was furious inside, I still moved fast. Luke was responsible for getting the car and picking us up. The rest of us would pull those two out from the rear. By the time we arrived, most of the people protecting Julian had already been wiped out, with those people taking the first wave. Rescuing Julian and Clara went more smoothly than we expected. As we retreated, I saw Clara clinging tightly to Simon's arm. In her eyes, Simon, being bigger, must have looked safer. Weak little Julian could only trail after us by himself, but I could feel his gaze drifting to me now and then. I kept taking down the zombies drawn by the noise, while staying on guard against those two. Just then, a zombie charged straight at Clara. She screamed, then actually shoved Simon hard into its path. Simon lost his balance from the sudden push. He only had time to block the zombie with his arm. Even though I rushed over and killed that zombie fast, Simon still had a bloody bite torn into his arm. My heart went half cold in an instant. All the color drained from Simon's face too. He looked at me in stunned disbelief. And Clara, the real culprit, had already hidden behind Julian. It had happened too fast. If I had not been watching Clara the whole time, I would not have seen what she did. But this was not the time to settle accounts. I swiftly cut out the bitten flesh from Simon's arm. That could barely slow the spread of the zombie virus. Then I pushed Simon behind me, covering the others as they pulled back. Caleb reached my side then. Clara's scream had drawn in plenty of zombies. Caleb and I were struggling to hold them off. More than once, we were almost scratched. Fortunately, the roar of an engine finally reached us. Luke had arrived just in time. But right then, for some unknown reason, the zombies in the city rushed at us like they had gone berserk. At that moment, Simon grabbed Caleb and me and yanked us behind him. He snatched up an abandoned iron rod lying by the road and charged the zombie horde with a shout. The last words Simon ever said to us was, "Go." Caleb fell silent for 1 second. Then he grabbed me and ran. I looked back and watched Simon slowly disappear beneath the zombies. That big, sweet guy who blushed whenever he smiled was just gone. And at last, we made it into the car. The car sped on for more than an hour, before stopping in an empty stretch of field. I looked coldly at Clara, who was cowering in Julian's arms. Then I yanked her roughly out of the car. "What are you doing? You psycho!" Clara shrieked without restraint. I slapped her hard across the face. Shut up. I ripped the mask off my face. When Clara finally saw my face clearly, shock and uncertainty spread across hers. Sophie Bennett. Looks like my dear best friend still remembers me. Clara and I went to the same high school. Later, we attended the same university. For the sake of our old classmate bond, I had always treated Clara well. She was pretty, soft, and fragile looking. Out of kindness, I kept helping her fend off creeps. Only later did I learn that she had been secretly flirting with every one of those so-called creeps. Clara. Long time no see. I pulled out the short knife I had just used on the zombies. Its blade had been stained a dark red with blood. Sophie Bennett, what are you going to do? Clara was clearly getting nervous. You owe me a life. Time to pay it back. Julian stepped forward, his face conflicted. I looked at him coldly. Do not call me that. It makes me sick. Julian opened his mouth, but still said nothing. He only stepped silently in front of Clara. Apocalypse romance. So touching I could almost cry. Caleb and the others must have figured out the bad blood between us. I could not kill Clara yet, but scaring her was non-negotiable. Luke, get this guy out of my way. Luke was holding back his own anger too. Simon's death had hit him hard. In silence, he dragged Julian away. He even had the foresight to cover Julian's mouth. Clara looked at me. Suddenly, she calmed down. A cold little smile even curved her lips. Sophie Bennett, you cannot touch me. Without Julian and me, the safe zone will never let you in. So that was it. Shock jolted through me, but I still wear upon my brows, and deliberately sounded dismissive. Who are you trying to scare? I know exactly what you are worth. As for Julian, what does he have besides money? At that, Clara looked at me like I was an idiot. The safe zone is already at capacity. They cannot take in any more survivors. Knowing that, what makes you think you can get inside? Because Julian was bitten by a zombie. The moment she said that, it was not just me. Even Caleb, usually so steady, looked stunned. Luke immediately yanked Julian's sleeve aside. Sure enough, there was a vicious bite mark on his arm. Black veins webbed all around it. It looked hideous and terrifying. If Julian had been bitten and still had not turned, that meant antibodies had appeared in his body. Bringing him with us was like carrying a human golden ticket. Because antibodies meant a way to crack the zombie virus. No wonder those people had fought to the death to protect these two. But I looked coldly at Clara. What do Julian's antibodies have to do with you? Clara suddenly lifted her head. Mocking laughter glinted in her eyes. Then her hand gently settled over her lower belly. What do you think? She looked at me, openly provoking me. I could not believe those two still had the energy to make a baby in the apocalypse. But now, I really could not touch her. After all, the tiny life in her belly was innocent. Even Luke gave me a small shake of his head. My eyes suddenly started to sting. A wave of helplessness rose in my chest. I suddenly remembered an attack we had faced long ago. There had been a very skinny boy in that group. His face was still young and unformed. He looked barely 18. At first, none of us took him seriously. So, we did not kill him. But that night, he secretly lured zombies toward us. He nearly got every last one of us wiped out. Later, when I wanted to kill him, Simon stopped me. At first, I could not understand why. Simon said to me, Soph, even in the apocalypse, do not throw yourself into the dark. I still remember the moment he said it. Light fell across him. It gilded Simon in a warm rim of gold. Simon. He really was such a good person. He was the first light I found in the apocalypse. And now, my light had gone out. How could I possibly let Clara go? We were now less than 30 kilometers from the safe zone. Even from far away, I could hear zombies roaring all night long. Clara kept that smug smile on her face. Julian tried several times to talk to me. I would not even look him in the eye. 3 hours later, we had reached the area near the safe zone. Many survivors from all over had already gathered there. From them, we learned a few things. What truly kept them out was not the zombies outside. It was the people inside the safe zone. Several times, they had fought their way to the safe zone gate, but the people inside refused to open it, no matter what. After 2 attempts like that, their losses were brutal, so they no longer dared to rush the safe zone again. But with this many people here, we could not just wait outside to die. But right now, these survivors, could not truly trust one another. So, no one spoke first to break the silence. Everyone just watched the other groups warily. But we could not stay deadlocked forever. Someone had to break the stalemate first. I just never imagined that person would be Clara. Clara stepped forward with perfect composure. She cleared her throat and began. Everyone. For a moment, every eye turned to her. Right now, we can make a deal with the safe zone. Because we hold the ultimate bargaining chip. Someone in our group has developed antibodies. The second she said that, I cursed her silently. Fucking idiot. But I did not stop Clara. I just watched her coldly and let her continue. As long as the safe zone hears this news, they will definitely let us in. She sounded utterly confident. Plenty of people around us were tempted. But still, no one spoke up. Clara did not look embarrassed. She simply went on talking. Right now, someone has to carry the message. So, I proposed. Clara paused. Her gaze landed on me. Sophie Bennett, you would not refuse, would you? I gave a cold laugh. Clara, you say there are antibodies, so there are antibodies. How do we know you are not lying? Why would I lie? Besides, did you not all? We saved you out of kindness. Then you turned around and blamed me. You shoved me out to die. In the apocalypse, anyone still alive knew how to read people. Who could not see Clara's petty little scheme? That was why no one had answered her. Since you claim there are antibodies, then I assume you are not afraid of being bitten. In that case, why don't we just throw you out to deliver the message? No. Clara shouted at the top of her lungs. I am not the one with antibodies. I watched her with a half smile. Sure enough, she dragged Julian out of the group. Then she pulled up his sleeve. The bite marks on his arm were hideous and terrifying. Now the people around us believed her. Whispers spread through the crowd. Looks like you two are pretty close. Everyone. Obviously, we cannot hand over the antibody carrier that easily. Why don't I escort this lady to carry the message to the safe zone? No one objected when they heard that. After all, they were not the ones being sent to die. Only Caleb opened his mouth, as if to say something. But in the end, he said nothing. I swept him a cold glance. She still insisted on staying here. But how could I give her the chance to refuse? After all, between us, there was still one hell of a debt to settle. Because her own life was on the line. Clara stayed very quiet the whole way. As I drove, I would not spare her even a glance. The sound of the car soon drew a zombie horde. They rushed after us all at once. I slammed my foot down on the gas. The tires crushed several zombie skulls. I could almost hear their brains bursting. Then a zombie suddenly clawed onto the car window. Clara screamed in terror. I drove my knife straight into her thigh. If you do not want to die, shut your mouth. Clara glared at me with pure hatred. At last, she stopped screaming. Blood kept pouring from the wound in her leg. The smell of blood quickly drew more zombies. Clara stared at me, shocked and suspicious. Sophie Bennett, you did that on purpose, didn't you? She clamped both hands over the wound. I flashed her a wide, toothy grin. Relax. You still owe me a life. I will not let you die that easily. The smell of blood drew the zombie horde farther and farther from the safe zone. At the same time, I saw a black SUV racing toward the safe zone. That was exactly Caleb's plan and mine. I had brought Clara along to help draw the zombies away from them. Clara seemed to realize that too. She screamed and lunged at me, trying to grab the wheel. I slashed my knife straight across her arm. Warm blood splattered all over me. In the apocalypse, my world had gone dark a long time ago. When I saw that black SUV make it into the safe zone, my car finally burned through its last drop of gas. The zombies quickly swallowed the car. The windows shattered with a crash. Clara deserved to die, but the child in her belly was innocent. So let me pay with my life for that little one. I felt sharp teeth sink into my neck. It hurt a little, but soon, I felt nothing at all. I must have died, right? When I came to again, I saw Caleb's rugged face. Rough with stubble. Ugly as hell. But why was I still alive? Then Clara must also. When Caleb saw I was awake, he quickly gripped my hand. I saw his eyes were rimmed red. What happened? They could not find any antibodies in Julian's blood. The reason he was not infected was that after a car accident, he received a blood transfusion from someone else. That person was the real antibody carrier. Then I remembered. Back when we were dating, Julian got into a car accident. He urgently needed blood. Without a second thought, I donated 100 milliliters for his transfusion. After all that, it turned out I was the unlucky antibody carrier all along. Watching the delighted lab coats walk toward me, I knew I was in for plenty of suffering next. I had clawed my way through the dark, only to become a light that could save the world. What a strange world.